Hello there. Happy Monday. It's Dr. Shiroko, owner of Heart to Heart Medical Center and the author of the book, Healing When It Seems Impossible: 7 Keys to Defy the Odds. And today I'm going to talk to you about inflammation. Now, inflammation is a huge topic, and what's interesting about it is that it's really kind of two things. It is both a root cause and it's a symptom. And so it can cause many diseases, but it is also a symptom in your body that you can have. And there's a lot to say about it because it's really about the elements of our lifestyle that affect our body's level of inflammation. So I'm going to just start right in. So first of all, some of the causes of inflammation are um, certain foods that you might be reacting to, environmental toxins, accumulation of toxins in your body, which can include heavy metals and pesticides and plastics. There's a lot of toxins in our environment these days, so that's one of the reasons I always encourage a seasonal detox to help clear that. It could be a reaction to a food you may have, and there's certain food groups that certain people are commonly reactive to, and I'll talk about that in just a little minute. And it can also be caused by infection, and there are many different kinds of infections. There are viruses, parasites, bacteria, yeasts, they're just any number of kinds of infections, and I'll address that in just a little bit more too as well. And then it can also be from certain genetic imbalances that cause your body to not process information or healing information properly. So those are sort of the main causes of inflammation. And then I'll go through like what inflammation can cause. So inflammation can cause heart disease. It can cause diabetes. It can cause aches and pains anywhere in your body. So one other cause of inflammation is also injury, of course. So if you have an injury, can cause an inflammation process to set up. And treating an injury properly is actually very important in order to help resolve inflammation when you have it. So the things that inflammation can cause, it can cause diabetes and heart disease and cancer and chronic PMS or pelvic inflammation. It can cause bowel issues, digestive issues. You can have ulcerative colitis. You can have arthritis, which is inflammation in your joints. And that's another thing, is that a lot of inflammation caused issues are how do I say it? Uh, they're called something itis. So you can have arthritis, carditis, ulcerative colitis. So different areas of your body where there's inflammation could be called something itis. So that usually means that there's existing inflammation. So diverticulitis is a type of inflammation in your colon where these little pockets get inflamed or infected. And so the cause of diverticulitis is often infection. Anyway, so the different possible causes of inflammation, which are like food sensitivities. So let's say you had a food sensitivity. I'll give you a little story. I had a patient probably 20, 25 years ago who had rheumatoid arthritis. Okay, so he had inflamed joints. And he came to me for alternative ways of treating that. And one of the things that I said to him was sometimes nightshade plants can cause rheumatoid arthritis. Nightshade plants are potatoes, tomatoes, eggplants, peppers, all peppers, and some other foods like ashwagandha and blueberries are also considered to be uh, nightshade plants. So if you have that condition, if you're sensitive to nightshade plants, then you have to eliminate all nightshades, and you cannot eat just a little bit of some nightshades. So I asked this patient, was he sensitive to nightshades? And I told him what the nightshades were: potatoes, tomatoes, eggplant. And he said, "Oh no, I don't eat any of that stuff." And then like a few weeks later, he came back and he was like, "Are potato chips and salsa, are they potatoes and tomatoes?" And I said, "Yeah." And what he had not put together was that potatoes come in many different forms and tomatoes come in many different forms. And he was eating a bag of potato chips and a thing of salsa every single day during his lunch hour. So his inflammation was caused by those foods, and when he eliminated those foods, he no longer had arthritis. So he didn't have to live with a diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis. And I think that's the important thing to know is that there are, when you have inflammation in your body, there are many possible solutions and many possible reasons that you have it. And there are many possible diseases connected. So it's a very broad topic and that I'm not going to completely address in short FaceTime event. And so the next cause, so food sensitivities, a lot of people who have Hashimoto's, which is a thyroid inflammation that can be caused by either an infection invading the thyroid, or it can be caused by sensitivity to gluten or sensitivity to other foods again. And so eliminating gluten is a common way of dealing with inflammation or testing to see if there's a response that your body has of less inflammation when you eliminate certain known inflammatory foods. The next level of inflammation is infection. And again, there are multitudes of infections, and it's hard sometimes to find those infections. Like, for example, another patient of mine had rheumatoid arthritis. And she came in with very swollen joints, and she was taking methotrexate and some of those very serious medications. And it turned out for her that she had Lyme disease. And so treating the Lyme disease, which is the root cause of her inflammation, would then possibly reverse her rheumatoid arthritis. And so that's kind of the premise of like figuring out the root cause of the inflammation and then possibly reversing it so that your body can feel better. And treatment for Lyme disease, there are many, many, many protocols for treating Lyme disease with herbs and acupuncture and sometimes medications. Many physicians have protocols for treating Lyme disease that are very helpful and work really well. Had another guy who also had rheumatoid arthritis and had Lyme disease, and I think I treated him for about 6 months with herbs. He also had one of the parasites that travels with Lyme disease. And when I treated that, it all went away, and he no longer had rheumatoid arthritis, and he went about his merry way. So that's the possibility is if you find the root cause. So the next level is environmental toxins. And this is really hard to distinguish because there are so many different environmental toxins. I have one patient who had ulcerative colitis, and it turns out that he was sensitive to certain chemicals, and he had a high level of those chemicals in his body. I didn't find an infection, and he didn't seem to be responding to food allergy testing or food allergy study. And it turned out because he was a furniture maker, he had all these chemicals that he was using on the furniture that he was making, and that was invading his body, and that was what was contributing to his ulcerative colitis. And so you can see that there are different possible reasons. You can have the same disease with a different root cause, i.e., you could have rheumatoid arthritis, and it could be caused by Lyme disease, or it could be caused by nightshade sensitivity, or it could be caused by a bacteria or a parasite. And so these are all the same quote unquote diagnosis with a different root cause, and vice versa. You can have one root cause many different diseases. So with inflammation in and of itself is the root cause of many different possible diseases, and vice versa. Those diseases have a different root cause. So there's layers and layers and layers of discovery, and once you discover what is the root cause of your condition, it can usually be highly likely that we can reverse it or improve it or keep it from getting worse. So that is my whole point, is to help you find answers that will help solve your issues and help you feel better. Of course, that's our ultimate goal, is to have everybody feeling their best all the time. So in environmental toxins, we could have heavy metals, there are people. I have one patient who had coronary artery disease that he started developing later in life, and he had a couple of heart attacks. And his inflammation was actually caused by mercury accumulation in because he loved to eat seafood, and so it accumulated and it caused inflammation in his coronary arteries, and then he had a heart attack. Um, and so chelating out the heavy metals and not eating any more heavy metals helped him recover, and he was able to not have any more heart attacks and also not have to take a ton of medication for managing that. Another environmental toxin that can contribute to various kinds of inflammation is mold. Mold is kind of an infection, but it's also kind of a toxin. And mold is a really common cause of inflammation in all sorts of systems. So your respiratory system, people who have chronic sinus problems or chronic bronchitis or chronic respiratory problems, mold could be a part of the problem there. Mold can also be a contributor to various other inflammatory conditions. So that's another thing to pay attention to. And you can test your environment to see if there's mold, and you can also test your body to see if there's mold stored in your body someplace. And getting it out by using certain binders, chelating it out, can help your body recover. One of my patients had, she was sick. Kind of early in the process of COVID. So in early 2020, she started getting sick and she got really, really, really sick. And then ever since then, she would be sick for like every 6 to 8 weeks. She'd get really, really sick. She'd get a cold or she'd get some respiratory symptoms, and achy and tired and just feeling awful. And with her, there was quite an exploration to figure out, what was the cause, because she had an underlying infection, but she also had inflammation in her sinuses and her respiratory system. And it turned out that she was getting better and better, but then she was sleeping in a bedroom where there was a lot of mold, and that was the main issue. Once she got rid of the mold, she was able to sustain her immune system and feel better going forward. So, environmental toxins is another cause of inflammation, and I think I talked about infections. So you can have parasites, bacteria, yeast, fungus, mold, viruses. Hashimoto's is often caused by Epstein-Barr virus, which is the virus that causes mono. And using certain herbs and supplements, you can actually minimize the effect of that virus on your body, and you can clear that virus and not have it cause inflammation in your body. So I hope that was helpful for you. And if you have any questions, please type them into the chat there, and I will be happy to answer them as the day goes by. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.